Welcome to the Transforming Trauma podcast. Transforming Trauma is presented by the Complex Trauma Training Center. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. As a mental health professional, you care for others, and the Complex Trauma Training Center is committed to caring for you. We are thrilled to introduce our Space Program 2025, an inner development program of support and self-discovery for therapists on the personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal levels. Therapists often focus so much on learning skills to use with clients that we don't leave space for ourselves. This interactive experiential program offers an immersive learning environment designed to cultivate space for ourselves in our professional role. As Viktor Frankl taught, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Starting February through December 2025, we will host 6 online sessions designed to cultivate space for self-care and self-discovery. We will be exploring the obstacles that stand in your way of being the most present, heartful, and effective therapist possible. Together, we will explore in a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment with the intention to create greater effectiveness and resilience in our professional lives. Please visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com and secure your spot in the SPACE program. It's time to care for you. And now for our interview. Alison Rapping is a visionary and accomplished nonprofit leader with over 25 years of experience driving social change and empowering communities. As the CEO of Arouet, she leads a dynamic organization that is dedicated to supporting, mentoring, and training women involved in the justice system. During her tenure, she has significantly expanded their programs and services and launched new innovative initiatives, including a mission-driven job placement program and a pre-employment support center. Alison specializes in criminal justice reform, women's leadership, advocacy, nonprofit management, and program design implementation. She is also president of Alison Rapping and Associates, a strategy consulting firm. Ms. Rapping received her MPA from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Please enjoy this conversation with Alison Rapping. All right. Welcome. I'm sitting here with Alison Rapping. I'm so happy to have you here on Transforming Trauma.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So the first question we always ask our guests is kind of a simple one, but I feel like it really helps inform the direction that we take this. So I'm wondering what you would like our listeners to walk away with today.
I think probably the most important thing that I would want your listeners to walk away with is that almost every woman who is involved in our criminal legal system, in our jail and prison systems, have some experience with trauma. And I would say almost 100% of women in the prison system have been impacted by trauma. And there are some very, very specific reasons for this. One is that since the year 2000, we have doubled the number of women that are in our prison system in America. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the key reasons is we really started to divest from mental health services, from trauma services. So those services really didn't exist in the 90s and in the early 2000s. And so the prison became really a place where people who experienced great trauma and acted out on that trauma ended up in the prison system. The second reason is that the majority of women in our prison system come from either poverty, they have an undiagnosed mental health crisis, which may lead to a substance use order issue, and then often it is abuse and poverty. So many women in our justice system are there because of really draconian experiences in their childhood and not necessarily because of a violent crime or any kind of violent offense.
Thank you so much for naming that. I'm excited. Alison, if you can share with us a little bit about your background, who you are, and how you came to this work that you're doing.
Sure. So how I actually got into this work was I've been doing this work almost my entire life. I grew up in a very Jewish neighborhood. I grew up in a family that was very activist, and both my brother and I entered into justice work. My brother started a nonprofit called Gideon's Promise, which was about reforming indigent defense in America. And there's a movie about it that Dawn Porter, this amazing filmmaker, made called Gideon's Army, which is a movie about these young lawyers. And what I saw in working with these young lawyers was just the enormous trauma that was in these communities. So after spending 3 years helping my brother and sister-in-law build Gideon's Promise, I came back to Arizona and started to work with the Arizona Mental Health and Criminal Justice Coalition, which was such an eye-opening and rewarding experience, working with policymakers, police chiefs, behavioral health experts, the prison, nonprofits, and we really worked together to try to come up with better outcomes for people that were suffering trauma experiences when they were interacting with the police for the first time. And I learned a lot in doing that work. And then when the job opened at Arouet, which was really about working with women in the justice system in Arizona, with all of my background working with women and women's rights, working on mentoring women and working in the justice system, this role really was perfect. What I didn't realize was how, for me personally, it was also going to be traumatizing, because going into the prison and spending time there, you meet some of the most amazing, intelligent, dynamic women. And when you hear their stories and you hear what's happened to them and how resilient they are, you realize that all you want to do is commit to helping them build the life that they so deserve.
I'm feeling touched right now. I've met a few women just like you're describing, and yeah, they deserve so much. And our society is really shortchanging in really profound ways.
And so imagine that you are raised by a family that doesn't care very much about what happens to you. At 16, they kick you out. You're living in a dumpster behind a Safeway. People come, they say, hey, I'll help you. And then you go down this path. Nothing in your childhood prepared you to be able to navigate this. So I really feel that we need to have a better understanding, both for men and women, as to why people make the decisions they do that may end up in a prison sentence. I also think that we really need to look at how anemic the services are for people coming out of prison, and how important it is that we start to build a much stronger, more positive and loving ecosystem for people that are exiting the justice community. And I would say that one of the key areas that there is a huge need is in effective counseling, trauma support, mentorship. There is such a need for the work that your audience and your listeners do to support this community.
Yeah. We're having this conversation, so I am a listener, but I'm thinking about our other listeners who are hearing this right now. And I'm wondering, if they're a therapist, like, okay, well, what can I do? Where do I start? And how can I, in the position I'm in, do anything? And I wonder if there's a feeling of helplessness, because I'm feeling a little bit like that. Yes, I know this is so important. And what can I do?
Thank you so much for asking that question. And first, I can say 5 things you can do. 1, just the fact that you care and you have compassion. That's the first step. If you call any reentry organization that's working with women and offer your services, they will probably jump to have a trained paraprofessional or clinical professional. If nothing else, even just being able, this will be number 3, is just to go to a place and have a conversation with a woman. Just a conversation with a caring person can mean so much. Then there's another issue, and this gets to number 4. We in Arizona in particular, but in many other states, we have a system where our Medicaid program is open to all people coming out of the justice system. And in Arizona, that program is called Access. In most states, it's called Medicaid. But most people coming out of prison who have access to that service are able to access a certain amount of limited behavioral health services. I really encourage your listeners to reach out to the organizations that serve this community and offer to potentially help. Because one of the things that I'm hearing as I speak to all of the health organizations is that there is a huge dearth of trained, qualified professionals to serve the population, but yet there are resources in the community, behavioral health resources, or even resources for behavioral health practitioners to help in community centers or help in organizations like ours. So there are so many ways for your community to get involved. And I would love to leave my phone number and email, and I would love to help direct people to resources that might be helpful for them.
At the end of our conversation, we'll make sure that, share those things, and we'll try to put things in the show notes. You mentioned that you served as a consultant to the Arizona Mental Health and Criminal Justice Coalition. And so that part of that is what's informed your advocacy and helping to increase the healthcare services, and especially, as you named, the behavioral health services. Can you share more about that, like your entry into that and what really informed more of the work that you're doing?
Sure. So first I want to say one of the things that I think happens when people experience trauma in America is you have to actually have a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction before anybody's going to see you in a treatment. This is one of the most important points I really wish we would talk about more. Most people enter into depression. They enter into some sort of crisis long before they ever are in a serious drug crisis. But there's no one taking them seriously when they cry out for help. It's like you have to go so far down the path before anyone will help you. And so one thing that I think really I started thinking about was we are not addressing these issues when women first start to bring them to our attention. That really impacted me when I was consulting, because I was talking to women who were in the justice system. And it was clear 5 or 6 years before anyone reached out to help them, they were trying to seek support.
Yeah. Can I jump in there? What are some of those
Sure.
signs? Like, what are some of the things that they said they were doing, or some of the, cries for help? What do those
Isolating.
look like? Yeah.
Isolating. They weren't hanging out with their friends. They were sinking into depression. Some of this had to do with feeling not good enough or feeling like they weren't accepted by their family. Then the issues may be that they want a lifestyle that's different than the familiar lifestyle they're used to. Maybe they have a different sexual orientation, or they choose to date someone who is outside of the norm. So they start to maybe be ostracized, and that creates issues. Or they have a desire that's different than the desire of their family. And so often they start to experience something and no one is really helping them. And then they may run away, or they leave home, or they get involved with a different crowd. But usually these issues start very early in life. Rarely does somebody get involved in the justice system. Like, unless it's like a DUI, and that does happen, where something happens and you have a DUI and all of a sudden you're serving a 10-year prison sentence. But the majority of people have had a lifetime of experiences, which is why I can't stress enough how important it is that we help people navigate the complexities of the healthcare system and the complexities of navigating health insurance. I can't speak enough about that. We have everybody come out of prison and we give them access health insurance, which in Arizona is really a Cadillac plan. Because if you get into a good treatment center that takes access, there are very good therapists there. There are very good treatment providers there. But if you don't know how to access that benefit or how to make good healthcare decisions about what is the right place for you or what is the right therapist for you, the benefit is for naught. So one of the first things that I really did learn this in working with the Arizona Mental Health and Criminal Justice Coalition is how important it is that we do a better job of helping people not only learn how to navigate insurance, but how to navigate what is behavioral health. When do you need it? What are the different kinds of providers? Who's the provider that's most going to serve you? And I will be very honest and transparent about this. For the majority of women that I work with, their only experience with behavioral health has been AA meetings. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with AA meetings. But for most people who are dealing with complex trauma, AA, NA, CODA, they're wonderful, but they're not a trained professional therapist. They don't know how to help you navigate your medicine. They don't know how to help you know that you need a psychiatrist versus a therapist. So I really think that there is a huge opportunity for the health community to create better navigation tools. The second issue that I think really affects people that are coming out of prison is that unless you really become lucky enough to get into a good treatment facility, and that is really the golden ticket for a lot of people, you are sort of at the beck and call, which is what 80% of the people are sort of at whatever they can get. They don't really know how to navigate it. They're just doing their best. And if they get a good therapist, they're lucky. But also a lot of therapists don't take Medicaid. So if there was a way we could find a group of therapists who really wanted to serve this population and were willing to take Medicaid at least until the person got a job where they had private pay, that would be a game changer. Like if we had a way that therapists could proactively let the communities know that they're available and that they have an expertise in dealing with either a specific trauma condition or this population in general, we would be chomping at the bit to get them into our organizations and working with us.
Can I ask a question? And this is totally uninformed. Could a therapist reserve 2 or 3 slots for a client who is in this position that you're talking about? Is that a situation that could happen if their caseload is full and they're private pay? Could they reserve 2 or 3 spots to do this kind of work? Okay, you're nodding your head.
Yes, absolutely they could. Absolutely. So let me go back for a minute.
Yeah, please.
We run a program inside of the prison. So every orientation, I ask the women, what do you want to do? At least 50% of them want to do peer support, behavioral health, BHT. They so desperately want to help those who were in a situation similar to where they were. They want to help. If they had a therapist who was working with them for themselves, that would also help them be better. But the number one thing that people ask me for when they come out is mental health treatment. And I will tell you a story about one of my own employees. So I have a third of my team has more than 100 years of lived experience in Perryville prison. I have 5 women on my team. Every one of them is a rock star. And collectively, they've spent 100 years in that prison. And what I will say is that every one of them told me the same thing. The number one thing they asked for was their desperate need for mental health treatment. And nobody was giving them an appointment for 3 weeks. They were going in, they're saying, oh, it's 3 weeks. They don't have 3 weeks to wait. They have been in prison. They are locked down 20 hours a day. They are eating whatever, the loaf is. They have very limited services, although I will say we have an amazing prison director who's doing a lot to try to bring more services in. And they come out and they have been a number, you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you're asking them to navigate a freeway system, Walmart, the supermarket, their family, getting their children back. The number one thing they need is someone to help them navigate this new foreign land that they're in. And when they have to wait 3 weeks for a therapy appointment, and let me also say another reason why this is so important. The biggest fear that I ever have when someone first comes out of prison is relapse. Women coming out of prison have a higher chance of relapse for a number of reasons. One is, which this has never happened to me, but it's a story that it really shed light, is that if you go into a QT or a Circle K or a 7-Eleven, nobody has ever offered to sell me drugs in a 7-Eleven. Nobody. I've been in 7-Elevens hundreds of times. But I would say almost every woman in my program has been approached at a 7-Eleven or a Kate, hey, you interested in a little of this? So, and then they don't want to tell us that they've relapsed. What we say is relapse is part of recovery, and you can never be embarrassed, never be ashamed to come to us with a relapse. We absolutely love and support you and understand this. But where I run into issues is that they come to me because they trust me, but I don't have enough resources. If they come for a relapse, they need resources right away. And so even if they just had a cherished therapist who they could talk to on a weekly basis while they're navigating the first 2 months, it really, I believe, for many of these women would be a game changer because they wouldn't see it as a therapist. They'd see it as a trusted support who helping them navigate this new world that they've entered after years of a life that none of us could ever imagine. Being in a 2-man cell with a tiny little blanket, and this is your life for 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about this. And I have an employee on my team. She was in there for most of her adult life. She's been inside of the prison. She excelled in the prison. She put 1,200 women through a trauma program that she created herself.
What?
Based on her years of trauma. She wrote 2 books. This is one of my amazing staff members. So she is working with us to build a program because she's so passionate about this, that she wants to build this reentry trauma program for women because she didn't have it. And none of our women have really had it. But what she said was, and she really helped me understand this, was she said, you come out and you are so afraid. And nobody's even letting you open a bank account. Nobody's even seeing you as a real person.
Right.
And imagine what the difference would have been if she could have called a therapist and on day 2 gone in and talked to somebody who really understood what she was going through and even just helped her navigate the first week. I truly, truly believe, and I don't have statistics about this, it's just from experience, that if every woman coming out of prison had a qualified therapist to help them navigate that first month, we would reduce relapse by 20%. I truly believe that. I believe the biggest reason women relapse in the first month is because they are so overwhelmed. And a therapist can really help them. A therapist and whatever techniques and tools the therapist would recommend. One of my dreams, we are dreaming about this for Arouet, is to we've written a whole outline of what we want the program to be, but we really want a trauma-informed, evidence-based program that we can put women through that really helps them be emotionally ready for the next stage of their life.
Alison, do you know, what are those numbers when women exit that system? Because you said within the first month they're relapsing.
So I can't say that I know exactly the number that's relapsed, but what I can tell you in Arizona, but this is true across the nation, 38% of women and men who exit the Arizona prison system are going to go back. Now, they may go back on a technical. They may go back because they've committed another crime. But usually what causes someone to go back is they've relapsed, and then they're not doing the things that they need to do with parole or probation. So they get dinged, then they get drug tested, and they fail the drug test.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's an immediate, unless you luck out and get a program, you're going back.
Okay.
So the idea of having therapists and health workers who want to work with people right when they come out, I think is one of the most important things we could do that could be a game changer. Here is another point that I really wish we would talk more about. So there has been, and this is very positive, but something that your listeners may not know is in America, and in Arizona in particular, 1 out of 4 adults is going to have a criminal history of some kind. 1 out of 4. Now, we have a stigma about felony convictions in this country. So if you have a felony conviction, it's very hard to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you now have 25% of the population unable to access the livable wage workforce. It creates a real crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this huge movement about opening up workforce. But most people coming out of prison have some ability to deal with a trauma that is going to take them from one complete culture, prison, to another complete culture, i.e. Walmart, CVS, JP Morgan Chase. Don't you think maybe we need to give people some therapeutic work to ensure that they're ready to move into the workforce? Like, how do you handle conflict at work? How do you handle driving on the freeway when you haven't driven on the freeway in 10 years? It's terrifying if you haven't done it.
Mm-hmm.
Or how do you handle the fact that your supervisor asked you to go to Office Max and get pens? Well, you've had one kind of pen in prison. All of a sudden, you're looking at 50 kinds of pens. You will be overwhelmed. So if we could help people with just sort of thinking about how to navigate these experiences, I think we will do so much more for setting people up to be really, really successful in that first month. Because I will say, as someone who really advocates fair chance hiring, there is no one more dedicated and more loyal than a fair chance employee who really wants to be there with you.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the women that I've hired out of Perryville Prison who do not have college degrees can run circles around so many people I have known in my life. Like, I will tell you my proudest moment. I have a woman on my team, and this woman is so amazing. And she lost a child to SIDS. She just had so many experiences happen. She came out of prison and could not get a job. Nobody would hire her, even though she'd gotten some really good skills in the prison. So I said, if you get a job just doing something for a year, I'll consider hiring you at Arouet. She diligently went and did something for a year, and I hired her at Arouet. While she was at Arouet, she got her college degree in workforce and technical education. We all drove to Flagstaff to watch her graduate last May.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's been promoted to our workforce partner manager. So her whole role is helping employers understand how rewarding it is to hire for fair chance. But the crown jewel of all of this was the United Way, who is one of our wonderful partners, hosted a luncheon at the Sheraton Hotel downtown, a breakfast. It wasn't a luncheon. It was a breakfast for 750 people. And she was one of the keynote speakers. And she brought down the house. She got a standing ovation. It was one of my proudest moments ever in my career, was watching her on this stage. There is nothing that makes me prouder in this job than watching these remarkable women just absolutely blow people away.
Wow, I'm feeling so touched. I have chills. What an amazing opportunity to share. What an example she is of what employers can do to support another human who has been through really tough stuff.
And here's what I want to say. Could you imagine you or I or the people listening that you were constantly reminded of the worst thing you did in the worst moment of your life, in the worst time of your life? And because you had to go to prison for that, it never escapes you. It doesn't escape you when you're doing a credit check. It doesn't escape you when you're opening a bank account. It doesn't escape you when you're looking for a job. It doesn't escape you when you're getting an apartment. We literally, but imagine, think about something that you may have done that could have landed you in a not great situation. And then imagine that that thing never leaves you for the rest of your life.
This is so, so important because I'll just say, especially, for any therapists who maybe don't work with this population at all, maybe they're in private practice or they haven't ever done any service in community mental health. But a lot of our clients in private practice, they kind of shame themselves over these mistakes or perceived mistakes that they had. And they're not affecting all of these elements of their life that you're talking about. Housing, the ability to secure a job. And it's tough even then when it's not really affecting. So you're naming, this is changing every aspect of these folks' lives and it follows them. And so to have this opportunity to get on the other side of that and really build a life where they can be productive and really serve in the community is so impactful. I love hearing about it.
I think all of us, we all come into this work for lots of different reasons. I clearly came into this work because I was raised in a family that really believed that religiously it was our responsibility. But I stayed in this work out of love. But what I really have learned in doing this work is that we are all so interconnected. And that all of us are worthy of these incredible lives and these incredible experiences. But I do think that one thing we don't talk nearly enough about in the justice community is the importance not just of treatment for drug addiction, which is all we ever talk about. Oh, here's this money. It's all going to treatment for drug addiction, which is very, very important. And I'm so grateful for the great treatment facilities that we have. And I'm also glad that there's so much less stigma and people are so much more willing to go because they're life changing. But 80% of people coming out of prison are never going to have that opportunity. So what we have to do a better job of is helping build an ecosystem of supportive care for people so that they can build a life and not let these little things that are really trauma responses sabotage them. And so we spend a lot of time and a lot of money upskilling people for work, giving them a construction degree or giving them a workforce degree. But until we also help them deal with the trauma responses that are causing them to sabotage, we won't solve this. So I do think that all of us that work in the justice community need to spend more time paying attention to this, advocating for this, and making recommendations to our community leaders as to how to build some other systems and models that could serve more people in a better way.
Okay, that is so important. So you're naming, it's one thing to support someone coming out of that system to get a degree. But if they're not able to navigate and work through the trauma piece, that degree will likely not serve. They won't be able to get the job or keep the job that they get.
And here's a perfect example. Because I've spent the last 6 years doing nothing but this. Like I live, breathe, and sleep this. I'm so passionate about this because once I saw what I saw, I couldn't unsee it. The things I've seen in the South in America, in the prison system, you cannot unsee it. And I don't know how you go into these communities and not want to be a part of the solution. But what I don't think people fully understand is that people are dealing with a lot of trauma while they're in here. And I'll give another great example. So there was a period right before the pandemic that everybody was reading The Body Keeps the Score in the prison. So I'm teaching classes in the prison, and all these women are reading this book. Well, they all wanted to talk about the book. So we've given them this book. They're all reading the book, and they're all wanting to talk to me about the book. But I'm not a trained therapist. So something that made me think about was, my goodness, here we are bringing these books into the prison, but we don't have context by which we're helping people explore and navigate the experience of reading the book. So one of the things that I thought would be a great idea would be maybe what we do is a book club with, codependency books, all of these books, particularly the books, the somatic books, where so many people don't realize that so much of our tension is kept in our bodies. And if they understood some of this, it would help them find different ways to release this trauma. But if we had people helping with that, and we could maybe do a book group, and then someone like you could come in and do a workshop with the women to just say, okay, let's talk about what you experienced when you read this. I think that could be game changing. So I would love to even consider the possibility of doing book clubs on books that women find interesting, and then having a trained professional sort of walk through a dialogue about what people are experiencing.
Wow. So that's one other way that folks can get involved. How would you go about offering services like that?
Well, I think one way to do that would be to see what reentry organizations. So there is a wonderful website called the Second Chance Business Coalition, and it's businesses that are committed to fair chance. But they have a guide that they have that you can just go to their website, and the guide tells you where are organizations in each of these communities that serve the population. And so I think you could look to see what organizations are doing this work, but I can almost promise you that the smaller grassroots organizations that are doing reentry work would love to have trained professionals. And here's the big thing. It's relationship trauma. Here's a huge one that if somebody would be willing, is there was a book you could read about how to reintegrate with your family. And then there would be a discussion group about reunification with your children.
Oh, wow.
So imagine this. When men exit prison, they're given a little bit of grace. It's like, okay, we'll keep the kids until you get situated. When women exit prison, within a week, here are your kids back. But imagine you've spent 10 years in prison. You've come out with $200. You don't really have a home. You don't really have a job. How are you getting your kids back in 2 weeks? But often you are getting your kids back. And then the kids have issues with the parents. So many of the issues that we deal with at Arouet are women coming in who are trying to navigate these new relationships with these children that are their life. They want nothing more than the reunification with the children. It's the most important thing to almost all of the women we serve. It is the most important thing. They want to be good mothers. And so we give them books, but then they don't have any way to process what they're learning. So if there was a way for someone to do a workshop on the reintegration process, or a workshop on how do you reinvent yourself, like you went to prison as one person, you're coming out, you want to be someone different. How do you actually do that? I believe there would be a very positive response in a local community.
Beautiful. These are great ideas. I wonder if, is there anything that kind of brings it all together for you and illustrates what you're talking about? And you're smiling. You probably got several.
Here's how I will illustrate it.
Yeah.
I came to Arouet 6 years ago, and this was not my area of expertise. I had a lot of expertise in women, and I had a lot of expertise in criminal justice, but I didn't understand the prison. I would say greatest gift is that Arouet has a recidivism rate of under 2% for 22, 23. A recidivism rate of under 2%. I will tell you why that is. Because we have wrapped these women in groups of volunteers who care about them, professional volunteers, women in the community who just want to be there to support them. We wrap them with peer mentors and peer supports. So women who have been where they are, who walk shoulder to shoulder with them. And I think when you bring women into a supportive community that has financial coaching, employment coaching, case management, ability to get involved with the clinical supports, mentorship, you give them all of these things, you are going to transform that experience for them. And so the most important thing I would say is if you want to be involved, please get involved. There is no greater gift you can give to somebody coming out of prison than your time, your treasures, and your expertise.
As you're talking, I just can't help but think about they have so much to give and offer. This isn't just, oh, we're just helping these people out of the goodness of our heart or whatever. There's a kind of dynamic when you think about it that way. But when we realize, you said we're all interconnected, they have so much to offer and to give us, and we have so much to learn. And you've really modeled this in hiring these amazing women into your organization. And I wonder if you could speak to that, if that would be an okay place to start wrapping up.
Sure. Something that you had asked in the question was about how we are trauma informed. And so one thing that we are really, really committed to is to not be prescriptive in our approach. We do not know what success is for you. And because I was raised a certain way, I have certain values about what I think of as success. That doesn't mean those are your values. So first and foremost, I always say, meet people where they are and understand what matters to them and help them get to that. What matters to you is not what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is also important is that what we've done at Arouet is we've really, really been intentional about diversity in our organization. And that is that diversity of age, diversity of ethnicity, diversity of sexual orientation, diversity of experience. Because I want any woman to come to Arouet and feel like she has somebody who she can relate to. There's somebody on the team that's going to be there to support her. But I think the most important thing is to really listen and understand where someone is and help them get to that.
Absolutely. So how does that maybe translate for folks listening?
Absolutely. And you said something that was so right on. We do training for all of our professional mentors. And the most important thing we do in the training is say that you're going to learn far more from the women than you're going to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have learned so much from the brilliant women inside of Perryville. They have taught me so much about the world, about life, about myself. So I think the most important thing is just to ask a lot of questions. If you show up with authenticity, curiosity, and genuine interest and ask a lot of questions, that is all you need to do. And you will start to build a bond and understand what somebody needs. And for so many women who are coming out of the justice system, what they may have never had is somebody who's just truly there to listen to and support them.
Can I share a story? This is just coming to my mind. A friend was actually just telling me something, and I feel like it relates here because there may be listeners who aren't in the mental health profession. But I have a friend, she's just got an amazing heart. She's just a beautiful human. And her daughter actually told me this story. We were going out to dinner and they were in like downtown Phoenix, and there was this restaurant. They were walking down the sidewalk in the evening. And there was this woman standing on the corner and she looked like afraid. She had a story. They walked past her and my friend said, I'm going to go back. There's something that woman, I just want to connect with her. There's something there. She went back to this woman and this woman shared just probably a snapshot of her life. And she had exited the prison system and was kind of back with some of her previous friends. And they had decided to go into a bar and she was wanting to stay sober. And so she was staying outside of the bar by herself and felt very afraid. And I don't know how long she had been in prison. And my friend just sat there and talked with her for a few minutes and gave her a hug and then came back. And, I don't know how that, but that's just a moment where anyone can, like you said, just have a moment of like human to human interaction, that presence, how healing that is.
What I hear more than anything else when I go to the prison, I hear this more than anything else, is thank you so much for coming. I now know there is somebody who cares about me. I now know that there's somebody who's willing to come here to be with me. There is nothing more important than you can do than just give of yourself and share your heart with someone. That in and of itself can be game changing to someone who really maybe has not felt that they had anyone who's really paying attention to them. Mm. And ask them about their art. Like so many women in the prison system are amazing artists. Like ask them what their hobbies are, about their art, I have people on my team right now that are skydiving and they're diving because they just want to experience all these. So ask them, like, what's your dream? What do you want to do? Because after spending all this time in orange in a prison jumpsuit, they want to do something and they all have dreams about what they want to do. And maybe you can help them get to that. Like they want to cook at a certain place or they want to go visit a city that they've never been. It's amazing the things people want to do. But I'll say the first time one of my team members jumped out of an airplane, I was like, okay.
That's life force coming out, man. That's like really living life.
That's the ultimate freedom. To her, what freedom represented was jumping out of an airplane. And now she's done it so many times, she's getting certified to be an instructor. And I truly believe, and I can't speak for her, but I think it would be fair that I can say she really, I think, wants to teach other women to do this because it so empowered her. And then there's another piece, which is that I think a lot of cultural communities have not always had therapy. So sometimes it's even just sitting with someone and just talking to them and sort of saying, this is what it is. Because people are really afraid of therapy. Like they may have been raised in places where there is stigma or ostracization of it. So even if you can just help people understand what the power of coaching, what the power of therapy, what the power of opening up to someone is, that if you can do that for someone and give them the space and the freedom to feel heard, that would be a huge gift. And you don't even realize what a huge gift that could be for someone.
Alison, I so appreciate you taking this time and really giving, us as listeners another way to look at this situation and how we can really get into our communities and give back because we've been given so much. I know I have so much privilege and things that I've had in my life that you're naming so many of these women have not had access to. And so I feel a responsibility there. And you've really helped me kind of key into that a little bit more clearly of ways that I can show up, a little bit differently. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and talk to you. This is such an important audience. There's probably no audience that we are seeing as more important than people who are going to help women navigate that first year to 18 months of reentry. Yeah. And so I just appreciate your interest. And if you need anything or want to reach out or want ideas, please reach out anytime.
Yeah. Share with listeners where they can find you and maybe some resources that no matter where they are in the world, maybe they can tap into.
So we are Arouet Empowers, AROUET empowers.org. And that is our website. Just go to our website and there will be a lot of resources and there'll be information about how to get involved. A couple other great resources. One resource is forwardfwd.us. They are a national organization that does some really interesting research. And if you want more information about the status of women in prison or the status of prison, Forward.us has some excellent publications. So does the Prison Policy Institute. And then I would say if you go to the Second Chance Business Coalition, they have a whole series of resources that you can look for. And then I think all of the local health organizations probably have a list of who in your community is serving justice impacted people.
Fantastic. Lots of places that we can start. So, and I just want to name too, again, the listener, if you're feeling overwhelmed, something as small as having a conversation, bringing that presence, opening our heart to another human who, again, has so much to offer. That's a good place to start.
And I have one other way.
Yeah.
We at Arouet have a really interesting program called Storytellers. And we have women share their journeys with business executives, policymakers. We just did an event. It was art and storytelling. And one of our board members invited 50 of their friends. And we had 2 of our graduates tell their stories. So that is a great way to get involved. If you're local, we would be happy to do a storytelling event for your company or for you personally. But if you're not local, there are probably organizations in your community that would have somebody that would be willing to come and share their story. Sharing a story is probably one of the most profound ways to really start to understand this issue. Reach out to us and I'd be happy to connect you.
Okay, cool. I'm curious, is there anything online? Like if someone's in, West Virginia or something, like outside of the Phoenix area?
What we could do, if somebody really wanted it, we could do a virtual story.
That's what I wondered.
If they can't find it in their own community, I'm happy to do that. The only thing is we don't know enough about the West Virginia prisons.
Sure.
But we absolutely could do storytelling. The other thing we do are these reentry simulations. What's unique about the way we do reentry simulations is they're all led by our women. So often, like the DOJ will do a reentry simulation led by the DOJ. We do them, but they are all led by and organized by women. So they really put you through the paces. And then in the intermissions, the women share their stories. So it's like you really see what this experience is like, trying to get food stamps, trying to get health benefits, trying to get daycare for your kids, trying to figure out how to get a food box. It is complicated. So if you go to a reentry simulation, you really can get a good sense of what that experience is like and why therapy and trauma support is so important.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Alison. This is good stuff we're getting here. And listeners, I hope that you'll reach out. Alison's got all those resources on our website. So thank you again, Alison. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. To find more information about our guest, check the show notes or visit us at complextraumatrainingcenter.com/transforming trauma. You can also connect with us in other ways. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. As a mental health professional, your commitment to healing and growth inspires us. We at the Complex Trauma Training Center are committed to supporting you in your well-being and success. That's why we're honored to invite you to our Space Program 2025, an inner development program of support and self-discovery for therapists on the personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal levels. Running over 6 online sessions in 2025, this interactive experiential learning program is designed to support self-care and self-discovery for therapists, exploring internally, relationally, and transpersonally. CTTC faculty will welcome you into a professional community of therapists that are seeking to create greater effectiveness and resilience in our professional lives. As CTTC faculty Brad Kammer says, the intent is that this program will help us not only become more effective therapists, but also love our work more. Please visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com and secure your spot in the 2025 Space Program. Thanks to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for producing and editing, to Elisa Sponseller for our album art, and to Brad Kammer for the creation of this podcast. We look forward to building community and connection with you and changing the world by transforming trauma.